Haymaker Coffee Company was established in 2021 to create the best coffee to fuel the underdogs who perseveres, who hustles, and have the give-it-all mentality to achieve their American dream. Haymaker Coffee only roasts top quality, specialty grade coffee beans, resulting in brews that satisfies those who demand every drop from their coffee and day. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, we have your coffee right here.
And we're back, Stripe Show Podcast on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. I hope all of you had a terrific Christmas. I hope you all have a terrific new year coming up. As the Stripe Show Podcast, this will be our only podcast this week. Everything's up in the air. I'm trying to take a little time off myself. It's been a fantastic year, 2022. Thank you for all being here. We will be back next year, 2023, with our full schedule starting next week, so don't miss it. James O, one of the top short game teachers, will be joining us today. I'm really excited about this. Been working on getting James on the podcast. I like his stuff. Go give him a follow at James O Golf on Instagram, also on YouTube, James O Golf. He's starting to put out a lot of videos. He was a former PGA Tour player. Now he works with not only a lot of PGA Tour, LPGA Tour players, but what I really like about him is he works with a lot of amateurs too. And I think he has a nice way about him as far as the way that he explains some of the concepts, the things that he likes to see in his short game. So we've been on a little bit of a short game run here into the winter months. Parker McLaughlin, that podcast did great last week, Short Game Chef. And then, of course, this week we'll have James O. Only podcast this week. Thank you for being here. My sponsor, About Golf. I am in the simulator right now. We'll be bringing the shots to life here as I'll be hitting shots as James walks me through the shots. Thank you to PXG for their great partnership all year long. Glenn Fiddish, can't thank them enough. Haymaker Coffee. If you haven't tried that coffee, you need to. And VyStar Credit Union, my newest partnership. We'll be getting to the VyStar moment here in a second before we bring James in. Now, getting good feedback from the putting stick. If you follow the podcast, you know that I did a little winter series in conjunction with golftrainingaids.com where you learn to use the putting stick at home. I'm a big fan of tools, swing devices that you can use at home. So I showed you how to use this putting stick with a short little 3-video mini training program, if you will, around the putting setup, the putting stroke, distance control, all of those things. Some things to check, think about as you practice off of the putting stick. If you've never seen this, you need to go to golftrainingaids.com, type in putting stick, use promo code Fulton20. Fulton20, that gives you access into the videos, and it gives you a nice discount on this. Practice at home this winter. That's what I wanted to be able to do, and that's exactly what we achieved with the putting stick. We are getting a lot of good feedback on that. Now, before we bring James in, our VyStar moment this week. This has been fun, folks, to see all of these submissions coming in. You can go to my website. You can click on the partners page, VyStar, and go down to where it says Honor Your Hero. You click on it, and you nominate your hero. Could be in the military now, could be a veteran. This one comes from Dennis, and it's about Gabriel Torres, and it reads, served 2.5 years serving in the U.S. Air Force before returning home to the United States, where he only stayed for 6 months before deploying to Africa to build relationships with local community. How about that picture there with his little one? Let's bring up a second one here today. VyStar moment. This is Logan Tucson. This comes from Kelly. Logan, he has served this country honorably, defending our Constitution and our country to protect our freedoms, foreign and domestic. Thank you to you guys. Thank you for nominating your hero all year long. Not all year. We started this about 4 months ago, and everything that we've been receiving here has been fantastic. VyStar giving out to many of these veterans, to many of these current military gifts, experiences, all over the place, including lessons with me, including club fittings with PXG, as we'll be getting a gentleman in here in January for a full set of clubs at PXG. PXG also does a big military discount. You can go to their website and you can check that out as well. So thank you, ViStar, for the ViStar moment all quarter, I should say, the last 3 or 4 months long. All right, let's get to it. James O going to be joining me. He is in the green room right now. Let's bring him in. I'm excited for this one because we're talking short game. Let's roll.
Glenfiddich, the world's most awarded single malt Scotch whiskey, is expertly crafted and made with extraordinary care. Each single malt is a work of perfection.
And joining me now from LA, there he is, James O. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me, Travis. This is really exciting.
Happy holidays to you. I know this is probably a busy time of year. You've got tour players who are an off season. How about that? PGA Tour player. I know you work with Ben Griffin, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, he just came out to the desert, did a few practice rounds at PGA West, getting ready for the Amex, and yeah, it's fun. The weather was great, and there is a 1 or 2 week off season.
Yeah, right. Those guys play so much golf, and to get a couple weeks off has to feel like, man, let me just get in my room, shut the door, and sleep for about 4 or 5 days. I know you work with a lot of LPGA Tour players as well. We'll talk about some of them, some of the shots that they're really good at. But I want to get right into a shot here that really plagues so many amateurs, and it's that gray area that I call it. It's not the green side, maybe a little green side pitch where it's 10, 15, 20 yards. And it's not that full approach wedge either. It's
Right.
The in-betweener, 30, 40, 50 yards. Maybe they've hit a good drive, a good 3-wood. They're right in front there now on a par 5.
Right.
And I see amateurs really struggle with this shot. Walk us through some things that would help them kind of calibrate, hit it cleanly, that 40, 50-yard shot.
Sure. I'm one of the toughest ways to hit a 30, 40, 50-yard shot is with the highest lofted club, whatever that may be in your golf bag. And the reason why is you need to make such a big swing to go a short distance. That's why we don't worry so much about ball contact when we're putting. We've got 4 degrees of loft, a very level strike. So like whether you fat it or top it, you really don't, and it doesn't make that big of a difference. So when I'm talking about 30, 40, 50-yard shots, the goal is to be able to hit maybe a sand wedge or a lob wedge and kind of hit it in there nice. But to build that skill, I believe we should use a lower lofted club. It's because you can make a smaller swing and advance it 30, or however, let's just call it 50 yards, just for easy math.
Yeah.
If you take a 7-iron, you can make a pretty slow, small swing and make the ball roll all the way to 50 yards pretty easily, effortlessly. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And now that'll because you're going slower and there's less moving parts, it's easier to learn the ball contact. It's easier to kind of learn how to brush the ground or see what it feels like to hit it thin. You wouldn't really stab at it with a 7-iron. And then you kind of work your way up to an 8. And then up to a 9, and you're not so afraid of loft. You're almost begging for it, because if you are only hitting 7-irons from 50 yards, it's going to be a tough way to golf because there's bunkers, there's things in the way. But as you're begging for more loft, it's where you have a little bit more confidence and you kind of understand the technique, if that makes sense. So that I'm a big proponent of start with a lower lofted club and slowly work your way up to a higher lofted club. So, that being said, I think if you, for a mid to high handicapper who really struggle with the shot, or even a scratch golfer, if you're struggling with the shot, and yes, scratch golfers do struggle with the shot sometimes, they just avoid it. Mm-hmm. I think they get too advanced, too technical into what you need to do. Right. And they just kind of need to simplify it a little bit, before they start talking about, do I cock my wrist? Do I roll my forearms? Do I use the bounce? Do I not use the bounce? And it's that I think that conversation is much more for someone who's already good at it.
Let me ask you this. I see a lot of it, and I like that. If I was hitting a 7 and then an 8, then a 9, like it would get bigger. You could see the acceleration picking up a little bit, and then you're like, okay, I need more loft, so I'm begging for that loft. Now bigger swing, I can accelerate. One of the things that becomes apparent, I think, in between that gray area, I think oftentimes amateurs feel like they got to put the brakes on, where, maybe the shaft would be a little forward, the ball would come out a little hot, or they just simply get too much recruitment going back, right? There's a lot of turn and wind up, and then they feel like there's the instinct to put the brakes on to only hit it 40 yards.
Sure.
And then, the shit hits the fan. So,
right.
The idea of like, okay, begging for loft, maybe conservative shaft lane. Do you like the idea of like kind of maybe like a more independent arm swing going back, where it's not so much of a turn, but maybe just more of an arm swing with a hinge, and then from there I go ahead and turn coming through? Is that a concept
I definitely
you
do.
like?
I definitely like the arms folding and feeling a little bit more independent than like a structured body turn going back.
Right.
I like softness. When I think of a 30, 40, 50-yard shot, I like thinking about pitching the ball. How would you like underhand the ball?
Right.
And it's not the structured movement. So
not wooden.
Yeah, correct. I like the freedom. I like it fold. And I believe that looks beautiful motion there. I believe that you can use a lower lofted club and learn to hit it high. Like it's relative. Take a 7-iron, learn to hit it low. It's going to go pretty low, but then learn to get it up in the air a little bit.
Yeah.
Learn to release it a little bit and find where that excessive amount is. And then,
right.
You just work your way up. But the most difficult club is the highest lofted club. So, putting that into perspective, I think is a very, very important concept.
Yeah. It seems like the light goes on for a lot, and they're like, okay, so you're telling me that I can just kind of swing my arms a little more independent, soft, let it hinge, yes, let it fall, turn through, and it's like, oh yeah, like now all of a sudden there's these little floaters that I'm hitting.
Sure.
And I almost feel like now I can accelerate a little bit. I don't feel like I have to put the brakes on in order to hit it 40, 50 yards. You said something there, a word that is taught a lot is the release and kind of letting the club head hit down a little bit and then pass the lead wrist. It's interesting.
Sure.
One of the things that I'll show players a lot is, okay, the club head comes down and then it passes and the lead wrist goes a little bit into extension and the face starts to look back a little bit towards the player rather than, maybe rolling the left wrist over. But just giving them a sense of maybe this little position right here, left wrist extended, face looking back, and that concept, that softness in that left arm, all of a sudden, now the body's kind of turning and supporting that, and they're using the bounce, and it's beautiful.
Yes, I love that. But I think it's really dependent on who the player is and what they're struggling with. If they're already too much this way through the ball and they're sculling it, and then they're thinking about this follow through position with the extended left wrist, I think that could be death. I think that person who gets a little bit scoopy and they're sculling it, I think they need to feel a little bit more back of the wrist and just soft, make that contact. And I'm big on slowing players down before they learn to accelerate. I'm big on like make it soft, make it slow motion. We're gonna hit this 50-yard shot slow motion. We're gonna just pitch it towards before. I think when you see the best players in the world, they've got a lot of speed and snap through it. I think that's very advanced. I think when you get good at it, that's how you can hit it. Where you have a little bit of a strike and a little bit of spin, but I don't believe that's the best way to start learning that. I think you really learn the ball contact where you can achieve good ball contact. and a lower lofted club is it's a bit easier.
Where would you? So let's bring it back. What shot do you like to start with? If they're coming to you and saying, "Look, start me with the shot that you want to use as a baseline, perhaps, and then we'll build off of that." Like, would you take them all the way greenside chip, or would you let them hinge it a little? Like, where would you to start getting after that clean contact?
So I would start pretty short. I would start greenside where they're 5-10 feet off from the green, and they've got. I always start with a lot of room to work with and see, is this player trying to fly it there, or are they trying to get the ball down? You know, do they have all the tools? Do they see a shot with a lot of green and get the ball down running? And then if they see a short-sided shot, can they hit it high? Because then you'd be pretty good and you can start moving your way back. So it's kind of this process of starting close and really paying attention to if you're an advanced golfer, you want to make good ball contact, you should be able to make good ball contact where you're 5-10 feet off the green, a lot of green to work with, and really pay attention because it is more forgiving from that distance when you're just close greenside to your ball contact's more forgiving. So it's easy to overlook and say that's good enough when you realize when from a coaching standpoint, it's like, well, your ball contact's okay, but if this continues to 50 yards, you're not going to be great at it. So I like to start small and I like to gradually work your way back. And I don't have a swing where it goes, okay, now at this distance, this is where you start really hinging the wrist.
Right.
Like at what point do you hinge the wrist? And, maybe this is why I'm not an expert. I don't know. I don't know what the distance is. I don't know what the yardage is. It's just kind of whatever it calls for. And it depends, how much speed, power you have, how big you are. There's so many elements to it, in my opinion. There's so many variables. So it's just, you kind of eyeball it and say, yeah, that looks good enough. And, can you get the ball up a little with the pitching wedge? Right. Yeah. Can you get the ball down a little? Great. Let's try it with the gap wedge. Let's try it with, and I think that's a big way that I teach is we start out really close. I do a lot of clinics across the country at different clubs, and we start out with the most basic shot. And we talk about ball control and how do you control that golf ball. And when you're really trying to control the golf ball rather than make a perfect strike or a swing, your strike seems to get better. Yeah.
One of the concepts that I always kind of come back to too in short game is, it's interesting. I think I was talking with Jeff Smith about this, another great coach out there. And we were saying, like, look, it's interesting, like the driver on that end of the spectrum, we're trying to increase ball speed. Yes. Right? Like that's the game, like ball speed, speed, faster, right? We'd all want more ball speed. And then on the other side, we get in close and it's about learning to slow the ball speed down. And if you can get the ball speed to come off soft or relatively soft, comparatively speaking, then you can start gaining more control. Right? Around the greens and the sensitivity of even a basic chip that can be butchered where it's like this little greenside chip. You'll see players, still with the ball way back, shaft forward, like the ball speed will come off fast and then it's hard for them to control it, or that greenside pitch, the ball coming off too fast and it's hard for them to control it. So I've always liked that concept of, okay, driver, give me all the ball speed, but then when we come in close, let me show you how to slow the ball speed down with some finesse. So now you can gain control, utilize your body in a way that doesn't matter if it's 10, 30, 50, you feel like you're in control of that ball speed and particularly coming off the face. And then from there, that predictability, now you can control it, how far you want to hit it. Do you like that?
Oh, I love that. And going back to the lower lofted clubs is when you're used to pitching and chipping with a high loft club and you go to a low loft, something that the ball's going to come off fast.
Right.
You've got to learn to slow it down.
Yeah.
So, I think an easy way to think about shots inside of, I don't know, wedge shots in general is anything you do with a driver, you would almost do the opposite if you have to hit it soft. You know, if you like a lot of,
Yeah.
you know, the face shut and rotating, you know, that's going to get the ball speed up, really solid strike. Well, around the greens, unless you need that, unless you're
Yeah.
trying to hit that shot, you know, we
Right.
don't need that drive. We need softness. We need more of a cup lefters. We need everything needs to be the opposite of how you would, you know, I like drawing the driver, and, you know, just a very simple way to put it, like, yeah, high cuts are great. Like if you're good at it around the greens, they work really well. But that also, that's very advanced too.
Yeah. 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 So like the driver, I remember I made a post a year ago. I showed one of my college kids, and I showed him post impact driver. You know, he was like this,
Yep.
you know, somewhere in here, and, you know, out of the way, rotated, shoulders opening, you know, shaft, you know, coming in a little bit forward. And then this little 20-yard pitch, he looked like this, you know, where he was less rotated, left wrist, more extension, club head pass. And it's like that,
Sure.
you know, this versus this.
Sure.
There lies a huge difference in how full swing and short game are very different. And I mean, sure, there are always similarities, but they are different. And I think that is the cool part about short game. There's an art in there. There's a big time art. There's an art in full swing, so I get all that. But like the short game is different in the wrist action and the way that club head's coming in and interacting with the ground. And, you know, it's like I always tell people, look, I want that club head to come in. We want to control that point of entry, and then we want to get that club head out of there. You know,
right,
and let's get it out of there. And that 7-iron, okay, it's going to come in, and then it's going to peel a little bit, and then it's going to come out of there. And in some ways, that player needs to learn almost how to sustain that a little bit longer through the strike. And in the short game, it's like, get it out of there, you know, because we don't want that thing to get caught in the ground.
Exactly. Yeah, I love it. I love that. I love that idea. And I love when, especially like the younger kids now, they swing so hard and they're swinging more than 120 miles per hour, and they can really move the ball. And you see them around the greens, and they have soft arms and hands, and that. And I love that.
Yeah,
I love seeing that. But, you know, I don't. Yeah, it drives me crazy when kids are just bombing the ball, and then they get around the green, and they're making like a mini golf swing, and everything's hot. Like, coach, I can't get the ball to spin. It's like, it's not the spin. That ball's so fast. You're throwing it overhand hard when you need to pitch it underhand soft. Like, you're missing the point here. And I think, they're different swings. You've got to learn both.
Yep.
You can't just one-dimensionally throw the ball as hard as you can every single time. Like, you've got to learn to do it different distances. You got to learn different trajectories. You got to understand when to don't overthrow it, like chip it short, and you got to understand when to chip it long. And I think that as we develop a short game that way, our swing will follow.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I give much less instruction to, let's say if you're a junior golfer just starting out and you're really young, if you're 7 years old, you know, I have them watch me more than anything before I sit there and like pick apart. I said, we're going to chip to that hole over there, and I'm going to land the ball about here and get the ball to run forward. And I'd like to see if you can do it too. And they can usually, if kids pick it up pretty quick, they watch me hit 3 shots. They go, yeah, coach, I'll try that. And they do it just fine. And if you watch how the kids learn it, their ball flight and their technique really match a lot of the times. When they need to pitch it forward, they get the hands leaning a little bit. When they need to scoop it up in the air, it releases a little bit. And I think that's probably the best organic way to learn it.
Mm-hmm. And that really is the essence. When someone says, "Hey, that person's got great hands," and it's really the ability to be able to change those wrist angles and the sensitivity and the nuance of those wrist angles of maybe a little bit of the application going back, but more importantly, the application coming through. Is it a little more this way? Is it a little less that way? Is it more this way? You know, and just the nuance and the sensitivity in the hands is huge. And we know there's certainly on both tours, men and women, there's they all have good hands, but some have exceptional great hands. However, even at that level, and I tell players this, my amateurs, I say, look, there's weaknesses in their armor too. Like some of them have a harder time using the bounce. Victor Hovland, as great as he is, has over the last year or so has learned to change his wrist angles and his impact dynamics to use the bounce more. Yeah. Which a high level player. I can remember years ago, I used to work with a guy by the name of Mike Goodis, who played the Champions Tour. And Mike he's still out there from time to time. Mike, I'm talking James, a thumper of the ground. Shaft lean, down, turning, dude, stripe show, right? Phenomenal iron player, driver of the ball. Around the greens, he would hit it with a lot of shaft lean too. So here he is, he's faced with these shots. He struggled from time to time a lot with those shots. He's like, man, I can't let it go. And for a couple years, I helped him kind of decompress that shaft lean out and let it pass a little bit. And let me tell you something. It took all of 2 years he just, from a trust standpoint and letting that thing go. And there was a time he told me, texting me from a tournament, he goes, I think I'm flipping it. I'm like, look, Mike, I'm going to go ahead. You've never flipped it in your life. You've never flipped it in your life.
You look like this.
You show me a video where you flip it, and then we'll have the conversation. Right. And sure enough, he's like, I feel like I'm flipping. And I'm, well, what's the interaction of the ground? What's the ball? And,
what's the ball doing?
It's good. Yeah. It's like, all right, go with it. Trust it, feel it. So anyway, it's just they have weaknesses too, and some like the higher shot better than the lower shot. Some like the lower shot better than the higher shot. But being able to educate your hands and have good hands and have all those shots certainly is where you see the best short game players. I want to go to the high shot. You just posted a video, I think, recently around the greens on really sending it up high. So if we were to go lob technique, set me up. I've got my lob wedge. Set me up a safe way. Let's say, I know there's different ways to hit high shots, but if you had a 10, 15 handicap player and you want to show them how to hit a high shot the safest way, what would you tell them to do?
I would go start with the most lofted club you have.
Yep.
I would start with a narrow stance, not such a wide stance.
Okay.
And that really, it's to develop the skill of understanding where the club's going to contact the ground. When we get wide, we can start leaning, which I don't love. And then I think
12
the biggest
inches
key,
maybe? Feet?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I think that's a start. And then learning that long, lazy swing. And with an open club face, I don't want you to think about picking the club up or dragging it back or inside or outside. Just make a neutral swing on plane and make contact anywhere near the ball. Like if you have a proper lob technique and you're developing, you don't have to hit it perfect. You can hit 4 inches behind it. You can hit the ball first, just like that.
I probably hit it 1.5 inches, 2 inches behind that. Still got away with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's how, in learning what it feels like to get that club face kind of under the ball and picking the ball up. I love that. Beautiful swing there. So it's more of that idea of that softness and the slowness. Again, I don't love when you jump in there, club face really open, a lot of speed through the ball. I know the best players in the world hit a lot of shots, and this is where some people that colleagues, we disagree because they say, hey, it's all about speed. It's all about speed. I said, I think I agree if you're talking to someone who's really good at that shot, but I don't think you should take a 15 handicapper put them on a tight line, say, hey, we're going to learn to flop this, use the bounce with a lot of speed. I think too many things. I think when you do that wrong, you crash. And too many crashes, you're never going to drive a car again, if that makes sense. So I think the psychological part of it is huge. And I think that's why junior golfers, young kids, you've got to learn to spin it, slice it, hook it, hit it low, hit it high at a young age, because when they fail, it doesn't affect them as much. Like, they can care less about sculling a ball. They'll just grab another ball and hit it. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't even remember. They just do it again. You almost have to remind them. You're like, hey, you sculled 4 balls in a row. They're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, stop doing that. But an adult, they could have sculled one 2 weeks ago, and they'll say, oh, I sculled my chips. I go, when's the last time you sculled it? Like, no, it happens all the time. I go, no, really tell me, when's the last time? They'll say, like, oh, 2 weeks ago I had this shot. And that was 2 weeks ago. You know, how about today? We hit 150 shots in the last 2 hours. You hit all of them decent. Like, yeah, but, 2 weeks ago I had this shot. So you can see mentally where it affects you. And I'm pretty sensitive about that too. A lot of the players I work with, it's all about, don't tell me what it was like 2 years ago, or we're in the now, we're in the moment. We're going to build this mindset. We're going to soften the hands. We're going to, whatever it is. But high handicappers, lob shots, open club face, long, lazy swing, slow it down, almost like exhale through the strike. I like to go, lazy, like, oh, I don't want to do this kind of swing. Right. And I think that's the best way to start.
Yeah, I think the psychological, you hit some really good points there. It's tough to look at a student and say, I know 10 years ago, you're telling me you hit your driver 295 yards. Like, I get that. But today, you're a different person. You're moving differently. You've just told me the issues that you have with your back or your hip, whatever.
Sure.
And you're hitting at 260. And that's where we are. And let me now dig in and help you build around that and help you with that. And maximize your speed today, but also layer in some level of accuracy so you can find it. And let's let go of who you were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so there is a psychological aspect of it that does get in the way. Almost like a protection, like it's protecting you in some way, and it's holding you back from learning the new skill and advancing right now, right? And putting it in play, right?
Right.
And learning to play with that and trust that. And everybody, I think, adopts to that a little bit differently. But I do think the psychological aspect is really important. I go back to my youth and I think about how many shots I hit with the shaft forward around the greens, leading edge, always on the ground, and then one every 4, 5, one every 6, whatever, the sod would come up. And sometimes I'd catch the ball first, but then sometimes I wouldn't, and then I'd lay the sod over it once in a while. And it's like, always in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, is it going to be when is that going to show up?
Right.
And I feel like psychologically that helped. I just was always steering and manufacturing to some degree around that and trying to prevent that from happening. And I think in today's world with the equipment and where we are technique wise, I think we're in a position where we can create environments for players where they can be free and let it go and maybe start ruling out the leading edge and some things that we don't want to have happen, so we don't build up that scar tissue of fat, thin. And I want to finish with this. Around the greens, oftentimes that fat, thin combination, right? It's like, well, guys, I hit one fat and then I hit one thin. I'm all over the place. It's really, it stems from the same thing.
Same
right?
thing. It's the
but
same
the
thing.
Psychological aspect is kind of moving them in the direction. Don't hit a fat.
Yeah.
Right. Do you get that a lot too?
Absolutely. Like when you, like, sometimes you see players and they hit it fat and thin, it's because they chunk one and then they don't want to chunk the next, so they top it. And it's and they think they are all over the place when the reality is they're not.
Right.
They just need to. I almost say you just need to chunk it less. They think I'm
Thank you.
crazy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I go, hey,
Yeah.
just let's just chunk it a little bit less, because I chunk it too. My chunks are just not as bad as yours. My chunks are a little bit better than yours. I thin it too. I don't thin it quite as much. Like I've really trained myself to not be so hard on myself when I thin it, because golf's hard, and I just move on to the next shot. And if it really bothers me, then after the round I'll go work on it or whatever. And I give myself legitimate time to go work on it, but I'm not so hard on myself.
Yeah.
Every time it hit it. Yeah. Fat it less. That's the key.
It really is. Yeah. I'll say that to them often. I'll say, look, what if we create an environment where you don't have to fear the chunk? Like I'm not saying every once in a while you may not hit behind it, but it's going to be a different interaction with the ground.
Sure.
But we're going to get rid of the sod laid on and you hitting it 3 feet in front of you. Yeah.
Right.
And then as that happens and that starts to migrate through your brain, then I bet you start hitting it thin less. And you're not on opposite sides. You're actually in the same silo of what's happening between those two. Did you see actually, I want to ask you this real quick before you go. Did you see Tiger hitting those shots at the PNC around the greens when he was?
Oh, yeah.
Well, like it was like he was.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't even doing that. It was like.
Yeah, it loops back around.
Yeah,
so
loops. Yeah.
He swings really hard, and he stops everything. So energy is conserved. So all the energy goes to the club head. And your hands are trying to stop, and that club it's continuing to go. He's trying not to make it so he can increase the club head speed.
That's a high skill shot there.
Yeah, he's
exceptionally
pretty good.
High skill shot. That was so cool.
Yeah.
To sit there and watch 2 shots where the finish was like hip high, and then 2 shots where he just put the brakes on the club heads, like doing the circle around his head.
Yes.
And all these balls are in the same spot. They're just different.
Yes. Yeah, and I think in the
really cool.
I think in the last 30 years, the golf balls have gotten so much harder that, even when you play a tough course with a Tour Bellata 35 years ago, you can drive everything in there low. I don't think Corey Pavin hit a single ball more than, 50 feet off the ground inside 100 yards, but he hit it close to because you can play that shot. Now, I think the equipment's too hard. Like the golf ball's too firm. I don't want to say too firm. It's gotten harder.
Right.
The balls spin less now, so you can't play the same game. You can't curve the ball as much. The ball goes really far with the driver, and I think with wedges, it's, in my opinion, not as fun. But you see guys hit a lot more flop shots than spinners because greens are getting firmer, greens are getting faster, golf balls have gotten firmer. So it's a bit of a different game. But these guys are good out there. These girls, I watched Lydia Ko play 18 holes. I haven't been this impressed with a golfer in a long, long time. When I go watch a PGA Tour event, it's like, these guys are good. And, it's fun to watch, and I learn a lot. But it's been a while since I've watched a golfer play 18 holes and say, "Wow, this gal's impressive."
Yeah, when you and for the audience here, if you get to go watch an event, you want to go to the range and watch them hit drivers and that's cool. Sometimes it's hard to get close to them in the short game. It's hard because the short game can be off in the distance, so it's hard to get in there and watch. If you ever are at a tournament where you can, you should, especially like approach wedge and watching them really control the distances. And I'll finish with this story. Like, I teach at Pablo Creek here on Fridays, and some of the players are members out there. Jim Ferrick will go in the back and he'll hit balls where I'll be teaching off to the side. And I'll never forget this day. It was about a year ago, and you can turn and hit to like 5 different flag sticks back there. And one of them might be 40 yards. The next one's 70. The next one's, 80, like you can hit a variety of shots. So I'm doing a lesson and Jim's over there hitting, and Jim's like the most distracting thing ever when you're trying to give a lesson, because it's like, hey, Jim, let me go talk, and he's the nicest guy in the world. So he'll sit there and chat. And so you're doing these lessons, and like literally like 10 minutes into the lesson, I hear him hit the flagstick. And my student snaps his head around. He goes, did you just hit the flag? Yeah. And because the green was like right behind us, he was hitting.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, he hit the flag from 70 yards. And like literally, James, 8 minutes later, he hit the flagstick again.
Yeah.
Like right in the middle on the fly. I'm not kidding you. 8 minutes later, he hit the flagstick over there on like 56 yards. Like, this is intimidating. Like, like he just banged 3 off the flagstick in literally 25 minutes. And I was like, you just when you're in that moment and you watch it, you just realize the incredible skill of, not only hitting the shot, but the exact distance. I mean, and Jim's obviously terrific with the wedges. He always has been, because he's never been one of the longest. But it's just these moments in time where you're just reminded how good they are at their craft. James?
He's incredible. He's incredible. He's
and he's not far off with his full swing either. I mean, just same shot every single time, dialed into the distance. And if it's a few yards off, he's wondering, okay, maybe it was okay. So then he's making the adjust. I mean, just dialing in, whittling it down within a yard or two. James, thank you so much, man, for coming on the podcast. I enjoy your stuff on Instagram. It's at James O, right? Or
James O Golf.
James O Golf. Yeah, at James O Golf. You're putting stuff on YouTube too, right?
I am. Yep. James O Golf YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, let's do it again, man. I'd love to have you back on. Maybe talk some putting and full swing in 2023.
Sounds good. Thanks, Travis. Take care.
All right,
Happy
man.
holidays.
Take care.
PXG has done it again with the launch of a new lineup of drivers, fairways, hybrids, and irons. The new Gen 5 golf clubs deliver significantly increased MOI, faster ball speeds, longer distances, and tighter dispersions, all coupled with the exceptional feel and sound golfers have come to expect from PXG. Schedule your custom fitting or buy online at pxg.com.